Shalom, first and foremost, I like to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostle elders, a great millstone who rule well. The salutations to all you brothers out there pushing this word in love, truth, sincerity, and humility. Once again, this is brother Shati from the Chicago camp, coming back to you with what I hope is another quick and edifying sit down. And this is just a quick vid that somebody sent me on the TikTok app, and it says the new Jim Crow, modern day slavery. And I guess this guy's TikTok page is Confessions of a Convict, and he's going into the fact that pretty much nothing has changed since we've gotten over here in America. Okay, from slavery to uh, Emancipation Proclamation, Jim Crow, and now the New Jack penal system. All right, this guy gives a very good but brief, concise history on how nothing has changed and we are still not free. So we're gonna let this play and then get some scripture.
People are asking exactly what is it that I saw? What truth did I see that made me change my perspective on our criminal justice system? And this is how it goes. So a person of color in the United States during the Jim Crow era
An Israelite,
faced disenfranchisement, second-class citizenship, barriers to voting, barriers to education, barriers to employment, and barriers to housing. Then in the United States, we passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act that said that we can no longer do this, discriminate based on skin color. 21, what is the only label that we can legally discriminate against, that we can legally disenfranchise, relegate to second-class citizenship, have barriers to voting, barriers to education, barriers to employment, barriers to housing? If you guessed right, in 2021, convicted felons are the only people we are allowed to legally disenfranchise. Now, do you believe it's a coincidence that 1 in 3 African American males now carry this label of convicted felon as opposed to 1 in 17 white males that carry this label of convicted felon to legally be disenfranchised? If you answered yes to that question.
now I got to get something real quick because he said that, because that means you have a law that unjustly punishes another class of people than other ones. All right, and we're going to go to uh this. So is it Psalm 73? Yes. Ooh, that's the spirit. Psalm 73, and I'm going to start at 1. It says, truly the Most High is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Okay. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. All right. It seems like whatever bad Uncle Esau has put his hand and his mind to, he's been prosperous at it, even if it deals with wickedness. Okay, he prospers at it so much to the point where you're thinking, like, man, how does a guy get away with so much evil stuff and nothing happened to him? It says, they are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. So when this guy broke out that statistic where 1 in 3 Edomites are considered criminals as comparison to, I mean, 1 in 3 Jakes are considered criminals as in comparison to 1 in 17 Edomites, that goes to show you that there are laws that disproportionately affect one nation of people than another, because as quiet as quiet as it's kept, and you can do your research on this yourself. Okay, prisons back in the day, okay, a lot of them held Edomites, but then that tide very quickly turned. Okay, I can't remember the specific years, but it drastically turned. Okay, but nonetheless, This goes into that Isaiah 10 and 1 where it says, woe unto him that decree unrighteous decrees, because even according to their standards, once you've done your what's the phrase that they call it? Uh God, what do they call that term when you go to prison? Yes, once you fulfilled your debt to society. And it's funny how they use that phrase, your debt to society. But once you fulfilled your debt to society, technically shouldn't you be able to have access to what you normally had before? No, they don't do it like that because they still need a way for people to be debt slaves. So just think about that, and we'll continue on
Let's
this.
look at what's happened between the Jim Crow era and 2021. We've had a 700% increase in our United States prison population. We've gone from 300,000 inmates in 1970 to 1.8 million today and as high as 2.3 million. So in spite of crime rate dropping, our prison population skyrocketed. And it was because we had the law and order agenda. And the law and order agenda increased police spending but decreased our education funding. And by doing so, we created the school to prison pipeline. We also created the war on drugs, which we now know is a war on people.
Reagan and George
In
Bush.
1986, we passed the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which differentiated between powder cocaine and hard cocaine, which we now know disproportionately impacted people of color.
True.
We also had the 94 crime bill with the Truth in Sentencing
Bill
Act,
Clinton.
which led to higher incarceration rates and harsher sentences for people of color. And once I saw all this, my perspective changed because I know that Jim Crow era never ended. Racism never ended. It just evolved into what we now have as the new Jim Crow, modern day slavery.
Or as we like to call it, New Jack slavery. And this is true. All right, because those things he mentioned, all right, all those things were put into effect by Edomites. And as he said, they just merely put a new twist to it. So even though we're not technically on a plantation picking cotton or corn or sugar cane, getting beat, getting burned, and getting castrated, okay, we are still slaves unto this day. As it says when we go to Jeremiah 50 and 33, the Elder Malcolm scripture of our camp. I remember when he first started doing sit downs, this probably came out in a majority of them. Jeremiah 50 and 33, it says, thus saith the Yahweh of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives, all you nations, but spearheading this attack, or his bad uncle Esau. And it says, and all of them took them captives, held them fast. They refused to let them go. So as he said, and even though he didn't go further back, I mean, you know where Jim Crow came from. All right. You have to remember the timeline. You had the triangular slave trade where not only did they enslave the Northern Kingdom, all right, the Native Americans and the Hispanics, but they also enslaved the Southern Kingdom, the so-called Negroes of the Americans and the islands. Okay, and they brought the Southern Kingdom over here from Africa and put them into slavery. And guess what? Nothing has changed. Because after slavery, you had Jim Crow, you had Emancipation Proclamation, which we all know when you look up the etymology of that word emancipation, all it means is that You just transferred ownership, which was the big stink about the Civil War, because you had certain people that wanted to keep slavery privatized, and you had other people who wanted to make it a bigger business. Okay. And the people who wanted it to stay private, the South, they lost. But before all that happened, they already put things in place so that when this does happen, nothing has changed. You're just doing it in a different way. You're still a slave. You're just doing it in a different way. And as you said, then you had to suppose you had the Civil Rights Act that said you could not discriminate based on your pigmentation, how you look, color. But guess what? You got the 13th Amendment that says that you cannot, for the most part, treat anybody like a slave or a second class citizen, with the exception of being a criminal. So that's how they were able to push those laws, okay, in the House and the Senate and different parts of government. That's why I say you had the war on crime bill. Like that was during the Reagan and the Bush era, and then you had the 1994 crime bill. That was Bill Clinton. Because guess what? They flooded the so-called Black and Latino communities with drugs. Because you heard what he said. They took the money, they reallocated the funds from putting more money into policing than education. So what does that mean? They took opportunities away from Jake that can help build themselves up in a positive way and gave them the choice of doing things in a negative way, knowing daggone well that they would get caught up. So now guess what? You have you have multiple generations of people that are going to continue a cycle of madness, thus funding the prison industrial complex where you will be serving time as a slave. Okay, and that goes to Isaiah 42 and 22. Isaiah 42 and 22. It says, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled." They're robbed of their freedom. First and foremost, we've been robbed of our heritage. All right. But as it pertains to this, we've been robbed of even by your so called laws in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. Okay. Because you've gotten rich off the back-breaking labor of the Israelite nation. And it says they are all of them snared in holes. And literally, certain prisons, you go to the hole where there's nothing there, no windows, no sunlight, no nothing. You're by yourself. You lose all track of time. All right. You can literally go mad and insane in there because there's nothing there in the hole. Okay. And it says, and you actually have prisons that are underground in a big ass hole. Okay. And it says they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey and none delivereth. Why? Because they're being exploited. They're fulfilling their debt to society. And that debt comes in the form of being a modern day slave, where many of these private prisons, okay, they have contracts with the military and the government, and they're making uh, uh, license plates and tires and different type of electrical conduction wires. Like big time shit for the military and the government. Prisoners are doing this. All for 5 cents a day. And it says, and none delivereth. And nobody's coming to save them because you can't expect the same unjust system to put them there to be the one that's going to get them out. If this system prospers on unrighteousness, then you can't get a righteous judgment from something that's unjust. As the scripture says, who can make a crooked thing straight? How can a bad tree bear good fruit? Okay, it says for a spoil and none saith restore. All right, because many of these people who are in prison for non-violent crimes, once they come out, they don't say, well, we was wrong, we unjustly did this, and technically it was under the amount and we didn't have a warrant, but you know what, we're sorry, you're free to go. Mm-mm. They're not saying, hey, during these 15, 20 years that you served in prison, the prime earning years of your life, nobody has said to them, you know what, how about we give you 20 million to make you whole? This should be a good way for you to start over again, make a life for yourself, and be able to function in society. Or how about we give you a job at a place somewhere? How about we just take this off your record? They're not doing that. They want to keep that stigma on you because if by chance you mess up again, which they're counting on Jake to do, they like, yes, we got him. This is why we need to get out of here because we have no justice here. We have no peace. That's why the scripture says, for you Jakes, we have to arise and depart, for this is not our rest. Micah 2:10, it says, arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you even with a sword destruction. Right. This whole place is it just stinks. It just stinks of wickedness. And the more rules that they set in place to catch you up, they're going to set up twice as many rules to make sure that you stay trapped in the situation that you're in. Whether it be keeping the stigma on you, whether it be continually disenfranchised in your neighborhood of education, finances, food, all right, redlining, redistricting, whatever they can do. If it means that they're going to have the opportunity to use you again and have the possibility that if you mess up too bad to be able to use you for the rest of your natural life, they're going to do it. And see, this is why bad Uncle Esau has such a hard judgment coming. All right, because as the scripture says, and I'm going to probably end on this one. Okay. Says, he that stealeth the man, and if he be found in his hand, when the Lord comes back, Exodus 21 and 16. And he that stealeth the man and selleth them, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Are we not still in bad Uncle Esau's hand? Are we not still, as the brother said, are we not in slavery? All right. Jim Crow 2.0. All right. The answer is yes. And because of that, the Lord has to, according to Galatians 6 and 7, he has to pay back accordingly to what he has done to his people. He has to pay Esau back according to what he did to his people. And that means that in the kingdom, you're going to be serving slavery. You're going to be getting hardcore punishment. You're not going to be getting any breaks. As mercilessly, and as unforgiving as the scripture says, as your wrath did tear perpetually, okay, so will our wrath be for the entire 1,000 years that your entire nation has to live in the kingdom. And you will feel every bit of that 1,000 years. You will be so happy when the Shabbat comes, when holy days come around. You're going to lose your damn mind. Because every single second of that 1,000 years of captivity, you're going to experience, as in the scripture even says, double. You're going to experience every bit of hardship that we've experienced in this captivity. So I hope you enjoyed what you've done, because this is your last hoorah doing it. All praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Hope you were edified. Until the next time, we're going to say Shalom.